Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick with CBT News as we continue our coverage of the CDK outage. The industry is under a microscope right now following the cyber attacks that took place at CDK Global. Joining us now is Tom Kline, lead consultant and founder of Better Vantage Point, to discuss the importance of having the right insurance and his recommendations for the dealers today. So, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us on the show. I very much appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Jim.
Sure.
Great to be here.
And this is an area that you know a little something about, working with dealers, right?
Yes, sir. A little bit.
Yeah, that's great. So following an incident like this at CDK, what best practices would you recommend for dealers following something like this?
Great question. So first, I'd encourage any of the employees who are reusing their passwords, which is not great cyber hygiene, but if they're using a password on CDK that they're using in other applications on their tech stack, they should change those immediately, because if this breach is like most, the passwords will get posted on the dark web, and then other bad actors will be able to get into other applications in addition to CDK.
Wow.
So that would be the first thing I would do for sure.
Sure. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. What would be next on the list?
So, I have a lot of dealer clients right now who are considering other DMSs as a backup. And while that may seem a little bit extreme, it's interesting that CDK owns a company also called, I just lost the word, Light. I don't remember it. But they have another
Okay.
they have another network for RV dealers.
Okay.
And that network did not get attacked, interestingly.
Hmm.
So they have other products, and that particular product is siloed and is outside the CDK platform, and apparently, is my understanding from my conversations this morning, is still up and running.
Okay.
So another thing to consider is whether you're going to use another DMS. I was recently speaking at NIADA at their convention. There are a lot of vendors that are not expensive, that are certainly applicable for something like that. So that would be the second thing.
But as you know, that's a huge venture to take on, especially in the midst of all of this, the crisis that's happening right now. When you move over a DMS system at a dealership, man, that you want to turn that place upside down quickly. Try to change their DMS, because it's a huge training initiative, obviously. But there may come that time that they've got to do that.
Yeah, I'm not recommending they do it now.
Yeah.
I'm telling them for contingency purposes, that's something they should consider. Just like it's hurricane season,
Yeah.
so people on the East Coast need to look at their insurance policies and see what's covered and what's not, right? It's the same
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
You asked about insurance, so
Sure.
let me address that.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So whenever there's a cyber breach, the dealers should take note of how many people are in their CRM and in their DMS. And let's just play a little math here.
Okay.
Assume that their CRM has 250,000 people between that and the DMS. Not a high number for a single point location.
Yeah.
So when you think about how these things usually get resolved after they're litigated, one of the things that dealerships or other businesses provide is credit monitoring, right? So that the people whose personal information has been breached has the ability to have their credit monitored and make sure that no bad guys are hijacking their credit.
Sure.
When you think about that expense is $100 per year.
Yeah.
So quick math, if you have 250,000 people, right? But let's just say only half sign up for credit monitoring.
Yeah.
Just the credit monitoring alone is $12.5 million, right?
Wow.
125,000 people times the credit monitoring. That doesn't include any attorney's fees, any
Right.
litigation costs,
Right.
any penalties from the Federal Trade Commission. The Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which dealers were supposed to have enacted by June 9th of last year,
Okay.
requires that any breaches over 500 people the FTC has to be notified by the dealership.
Mm,
So I know dealerships are anxious to know, and CDK has not given any information yet about what information from the dealerships have actually been breached.
okay.
So it's very much a point of anxiety, and I'm sure they're getting phone calls about it
Oh yeah.
when customers are being made aware of it.
Yeah, yeah, there's no question about it. In terms of the insurance and the insurance coverage, how much is typically a policy going to cover for a dealer in a situation like this?
Yeah, it can vary, obviously, depending on the cyber carrier.
Okay,
But business interruption claims, which is in this case, it would be a third party claim or a time element loss, is what it's called.
okay.
The time element loss is because the third party CDK is down and you're unable to conduct business.
Hmm.
Now, in order to put in a claim, you're going to have to compare June, once June closes out, or July, or however long it goes out, you're going to have to compare June and July to previous years to determine how much the loss was.
Okay.
So it'll depend on whether there's a sub limit on the insurance, which
Hmm.
would limit the amount of
Hmm.
the business interruption, or whether the business interruption coverage um, is utilized for the whole amount of the indemnity. So if you have a $5 million policy, whether you could put a claim in for the full 5 million.
Hmm. Hmm. So, but let me ask you this, and that's on the loss of business, which dealers are obviously concerned about. But what if I've got 10 stores in my group and we're hacked and the ransom is $10 million, or it's $20 million for us to get our group back up and running? What happens then? Does an insurance company pay a ransom?
Insurance companies will pay ransom, and that's clearly outlined in the policy. Again, sometimes there's a sub limit where you might have a $5 million total policy, but you might only have, $2 million sub limit or a $1 million sub limit
And
to pay ransom.
what is this? What's the sublimit that's specifically for the ransom?
There is sometimes a sub limit specifically for ransom, yes.
Okay, okay. And is that something that a dealer can buy more coverage on? So if especially in light of this, can they go in and say, hey, we've got X number of stores in our operation, and we really need to be covered because I don't think the ransom is going to be a couple of $1 million in a big operation, right?
Right. That's right. So I think, and it's yet to be seen that the cyber insurance companies the market's going to harden, right? It's going to immediately harden. If I'm an underwriter at a cyber insurance company this week, I'm scratching my head and thinking about what the risk actually is.
Sure.
So yes, dealerships can certainly apply for cyber coverage. I know a lot of dealerships don't have cyber coverage right now.
Oof. Yeah.
And that's a rough way to go. I call that a case of the yets, where I haven't had a problem yet, so I'm not gonna
That's
not
right.
gonna buy any insurance yet.
Yeah.
And certainly something to consider,
Yeah.
which I would strongly consider.
Sure.
But I think the market will harden, and I think the cyber insurance companies are going to do a lot more scrutiny in their underwriting before they are willing to offer quotes.
Sure. You've mentioned some of them, but what are some of the common pitfalls or mistakes dealers make when it comes to cybersecurity and insurance?
It's a good question, Jim. So, what I see in my practice is that dealerships don't take their whole IT infrastructure very seriously. They might have outdated computers with old software. I was recently in a store. One key track system had, an operating system from Microsoft that was, 3 versions ago, right? And they had stopped supporting it. And I recently read a exclusion that cyber companies won't pay anything if you don't have all of the up-to-date softwares that are necessary. So
Oh
if
boy.
you have outdated hardware and software, there's an exclusion that they're not going to pay it at all.
Oh my
So
gosh. Wow.
so number one is your IT infrastructure. Number two, dealers should dust off their Graham-Leach-Bliley Act,
Hmm.
or GLBA safeguard information, which dealerships were supposed to be in compliance with on June the 9th of last year.
Right.
A lot of those safeguards are there to protect customers' PII.
Mm-hmm.
So if they haven't done the things that are necessary to be compliant with that, that's certainly the definitely number two. And of course, looking at their cyber coverage, reading the exclusions, making sure they understand what won't be covered so they can then take an action plan to make sure that they can shore up their defenses, if you will, to make sure that those things are covered.
Man, no question about it. You're probably sending chills up the spines of many dealers right now saying, oh my gosh, we can't get into this fast enough, right? Because if in the event that this obviously this cyber attack has happened, but now doesn't that open up the doorway for so many other opportunities for hackers out there that want to inflict pain, on so many dealers nationwide, right? I mean, now they've got an easy in.
Well, it'll be determined whether they can get into the dealerships through the CDK breach.
Yeah.
But if dealers make themselves easily vulnerable by not doing the right things, by not having multi-factor authentication, some real simple things that can just harden their infrastructure, if you will, to make sure that the cyber criminals aren't going to see them as easy prey.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Tom Kline, lead consultant and founder of Better Vantage Point. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We want to make sure that we've got an open line to you because this is a story that's just never ending here, and it seems like every hour is a month. But nevertheless, thank you so much for joining us. Love to do a follow-up with you, as I said, to get some more information.
Great. Be my pleasure. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.